Aloha and welcome to this episode of Leadership and Role Models. My name is Leo Hiram. In this series, we present the leadership principles of distinguished leaders of the past to inform, educate, and promote role models for emulation by young leadership aspirants like you. By emulation, we mean having a passion and taking actions to reach or exceed the achievements of your role models. I was meant to fly. Those were the words spoken by Amelia Earhart at the end of a 10-minute flight at an airfare around 1920.
I discovered flight at age 20 at a flight show as a passenger. I flew for only minutes, but flight became and stayed a lifelong passion instantly.
She figuratively and literally took off from there. Never looked back, becoming the best-known aviator second only to Charles Lindbergh, and a thought leader in early aviation and champion of a woman's right to pursue a career. Just for historical purposes, Amelia was born in 1897 and declared dead in 1939 in absentia. In other words, her remains were never found. She counseled, be free and independent. So our inquiry in this episode explores Amelia's perspective on defining what is leadership in a field or a profession. Her vision was, a pilot is a pilot, and I'm going to be a leader in aviation as a pilot.
My flying career was pioneering. It took place in a time when women were expected to stay home, unsuitable for the physical and mental demands and rigors of flying.
Now keep in mind that for a woman of her time, that statement was a challenge, not just based on the technological aspects of flight, but also to the perspective of society which held that aviation was the domain of men. In fact, the prevailing view was women belonged in the home. However, Amelia did recognize there were limits to what women could achieve in aviation in her time, but it was not because of women's inferiority. Amelia fought for and helped establish the competitive women's ranking and record system in aviation. Her reasoning was practical and realistic because women of her time did not possess the resources, as most did not hold jobs or pursue professions, nor have access to planes, as men did, and thus they were not able to gain the experience to compete with men during Amelia's lifetime. So, from Amelia's perspective, leadership in a field or profession does not differentiate on the basis of gender, unless and until specific issues are involved, like the availability of resources, opportunity, and as a result, and most important, experience. To Amelia, those were practical issues to be dealt with and resolved, and she did by recognizing and grasping opportunities, getting airplanes, raising funds, and setting records, exciting women to follow her lead. On Amelia's part, that took courage, persistence, and tenacity, personal characteristics which fold into her definition of leadership. Amelia's already growing notoriety in flying through her own endeavors as a woman barnstormer was rocketed to heroine and international celebrity status when she was selected and flew as a passenger across the Atlantic, becoming the first woman to do so.
And I proved ready when I won over key decision makers who selected me to be the first woman flown across the Atlantic. Yeah, I flew as a passenger and I felt like a sack of potatoes most of the time. But I had the important responsibility of record keeping. I recorded times, dates, duration, weather conditions, navigation direction, and those records proved invaluable for future flight technology and for future women in flight.
Interestingly, Few remember, much less celebrate her two male pilots. That flight is remembered as being all about Amelia.
And upon landing, I became the instant subject of adulation and praise. I accepted, embraced celebrity. Why? Because this afforded me the opportunity to share with the world what I knew and what I was learning.
She embraced the fame and celebrity in support of her passion for flight. She married her promoter, George P. Putnam, who drove her hard, some say too hard, to successfully raise the funds necessary to support her flying career. Thus, leadership includes recognizing and grabbing opportunities and the ability to fund pursuit of one's leadership aspirations in a field. Just think of how many people aspiring to leadership do not recognize opportunity. And even when opportunity calls, they cannot fund moving forward with their work in a field or profession to become leaders. In addition, for Amelia, leadership meant establishing partnerships. She partnered in a number of business ventures and with organizations. In fact, she even referred to her marriage as a partnership, which would last so long as it did not interfere with her career nor require remaining faithful to each other. Scandalous at that time, and even today, there are those who condemn her as an adulteress. Amelia included collaboration, as evidenced by being a founding member and first president of a women's organization for female aviators called the 99s to promote and assist women in flight. It's an organization which still exists today. Amelia recognized the criticality of and practiced communicating in several highly successful ways, actually writing and authoring 2 books, magazine articles, and through her ongoing cross-country lecturing and several congressional appearances. She was well known, well regarded, and supported by several presidents, and was on writing and dialogue terms with Eleanor Roosevelt.
My flying career spanned the World War I period through the Great Depression and political uncertainties that led to World War II. There were many, many issues vying for public attention and funding. Had I not been an advocate, my and other women's opportunities in flight would have been delayed or stymied.
What's the phrase used today? Publish or perish for leaders in their fields? Well, Amelia did so much more. Being a communicator and being media savvy are included in Amelia's definition of leadership. Now, about skill. How good was Amelia as a pilot? Well, based on her record and as opined in numerous resources, there is controversy over whether Amelia was a born flyer or how good she was. Observations that she was not the most skilled in her class. She was prone to incidents, particularly upon takeoff and landing. However, her self-confidence, her courage, and her ability to face and overcome risk are evident in a number of records she set during her 18-year career. On her last flight, attempting to circumnavigate the globe, which she classified as being just for fun, she had traveled 20,000 miles in 21 days, averaging 4 to 5 hours of sleep before she disappeared. Keep in mind that airspeeds in those days was much, much lower than today. And even though her husband pleaded with her not to take on the next leg from New Guinea to a very small island for refueling, she did, and perished. Such was her passion and drive to succeed. Amelia did take flying lessons, worked with contractors on the design and construction of her planes, and worked with and for early commercial airlines being founded during her time. Still, there are those who accuse her of being unremarkable. She had mishaps, stained by her disappearance on her attempt to circumnavigate the globe, where it is generally believed she got lost during her flight from New Guinea to Honolulu, found no place to land, ran out of gas, ditched, and did not survive. However, there are other and even conspiracy theories. So, there is no doubt that elements in their definition of leadership include having the necessary skills and striving for excellence. However, there is a caveat, and that is how those skills are applied. For her, it was in setting records, which included her courage, endurance, and mental toughness, with a readiness to suffer accidents, like crashing her Electra while taking off in Honolulu and surviving, and even lose her life, ultimately, which is what happened. And each of those records were followed by lectures and trips to promote aviation, women's rights to a career, and of course, to raise money. But there's one more area that requires a level of scrutiny with regards to defining leadership in the field. Early development, where you're building a foundation, where you're establishing a base. In Amelia's case, what was that foundation? What built her base?